Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another podcast. Mini Pastor Lucas here. Great to be with you today. Wow. And this is a podcast mini that I am struggling to put together because there's too much I want to say. And we try to get these like right around that 10-minute mark. And I have so many like little good things here for everybody today. But if you haven't noticed yet, the title of the podcast, I'm talking about choose the right people. Choose the right people. I found something to be true in my life that I choose people to be a part of my life differently depending on the situation. So let me explain to you. I was extremely picky about choosing my spouse, and you probably were too. And I am still kind of picky when it comes to choosing friends, but I'm not as picky as I was about finding my spouse. But I'm still like, when it comes to friendship, all right, I've got standards and I've got things that I hold dear to my heart as non-negotiables. And you can't do certain things and you can't cross the line in certain places. And if you do certain things and you cross the line in certain places, well, then I'm not going to be your friend. There's no negotiating certain things, short leash, so to speak. And then when it comes to hiring people, maybe at church, I have completely different like standards. And so I have to choose the right people based upon kind of a different set of standards. And there is, I would say, a learning curve that I have had to go through that sometimes I didn't know the right thing to do at the beginning, but through trial and error, I figured some things out. And um, I want to share a little bit of that with you today. Okay, so this podcast is not about finding the right spouse or finding the right friends. This podcast is going to be about how to not just hire the right people in your life, but manage those hires as well. And this comes from a blog that our staff went through just a few days ago. And the man's name, he's a strong Christian. He works at a great church. And his name is Dan Ryland. And he's got some really good stuff. But this blog in particular, I thought was my favorite one I've ever read of his. So I want to go through five warning signs of a hire or a coworker. Okay. Now this podcast is going to be useful to you if you're the boss hiring people and if you're the boss dealing with people. But this will also be extremely useful for working on the same level with coworkers. Okay. Because I've got what I call like five warning signs or five signs that you can spot in a coworker or an employee. Okay. Sometimes um, when you hire people, you have to hire people based on talent, but also you want good character, you want commitment, but you're willing to work with setbacks, you're willing to work with bad attitudes sometimes, especially if their talent level is really good. You're willing to work with a little bit of laziness at times, especially if they're really talented. You're kind of willing to work with some things. And so, how do you deal with this stuff? How do you work with stuff? So, I want to kind of go over some of that today. And I only have a few minutes left. So, I'm going to go over it quickly, okay? Because sometimes when you work with people, the number one thing that can happen out of five, I've got five for you, but one thing that can happen is a lot of times people are quick to find all the problems and no solutions. So they will bring up to you just a litany of problems, like at the workplace or with the work environment or with a customer, something with the schedule, and problem. But they don't bring any solutions. Now that's not good. That's a warning sign, and that's a bad sign in a coworker or a hire that you have made. And here's the most important thing. If you're dealing with that, this is what you need to do. You need to challenge that staff member to always present 2 or 3 potential solutions for any problem they see and be willing to cheerfully help accomplish the solution. So if you're dealing with somebody in the workplace that is a negative Nancy, sorry to all the Nancys out there, you've got to challenge this staff member. You have to, especially if you're the boss, to bring potential solutions and to cheerfully help accomplish that solution. Second warning sign is you see like enthusiasm and joy fade. All right. Now, if you start to see that in an employee that you have, this is what you need to do. You got to catch this early. So identify this early and talk to them. And what happens when you talk to them is you may find out that something is going on at home or there are some expectations that need to be cleared up. And you got to ask this person, how are you doing? Like not at your job, but how are you doing emotionally, mentally? How are you doing? And you may find that something is wrong in their life and that's why they have a bad attitude and that's why their joy has faded, and it might not have anything to do with you as a boss or the company or the work environment. It may have something to do with personal stuff happening at home or in their life or with a friend they have, and their joy is fading. You've got to address this early, and you've got to uh, not confront them with this, but you've got to chat with them, talk with them, and ask them this question: how are you doing? The third warning sign is they complain more than they contribute. Okay. So if you have a complainer on your hands, now a complaint is a little different than like number one, which was they are finding problems. Okay. Now they just complain all the time. I'm hot, I'm cold, I'm tired, I drink too much caffeine. All these things are just kind of can be just like constant complaints. They're just complaining, complaining, complaining. Well, this is how you handle that. Okay, you ready for this one? Just communicate to them the importance and expectations of communicating and talking with a positive bias. You don't want your work environment to be full of complainers. It kills the vibe, it kills the atmosphere, it causes others to have a bad attitude because they're around complainers. It causes others to not want to come to work because they're just around complainers all the time. If you have a complaining environment, it's a bad environment, it's a bad work environment. So you must, as a boss, or maybe you can do this with just another employee that you work with, communicate the importance and expectations of coming to work with a positive bias. You've got to confront this. Another fourth warning sign is they become disconnected or withdrawn. If that's the case, that you see somebody you've hired starts to become disconnected or withdrawn, this is what you need to do. You need to tell them you can see that something's up and that they're not the same. But here's the most important part: ask them how you can help. That's the most important part here. If they're starting to, number four, uh, get disconnected and withdrawn, you must ask them, how can I help? Now, why do you have to say that? That's because that pulls them in. Okay. And what they're doing is pulling away. You want them to lean into you. You want them to gather to you. You want them to be connected to you and not withdrawn. Now, if you say to them, how can I help? All right, that means you want to connect to them. You want to draw into them. And they're going to respond very positively to that. And you will most likely be very surprised at the answer they give you. They're going to want help. They're going to want you to come into their life and connect with them, and that will eliminate that disconnection and that withdrawn attitude and demeanor that they've had around you. Now, the fifth warning sign, the last one that I have to deliver to you today, and like I said, all this information is from an awesome man of God named Dan Ryland. is another warning sign amongst the workplaces. Once they've had a disagreement and discussed it in a mature manner, they can't let it go. And some people do struggle with a maturity of letting things go. And if that's the case, you have somebody in your workplace who can't let something go. Now, here's what I have to say about that. This is how you handle it. Now, this is often not so much about a difficult staff member, but something of passion within them. Okay, help them see a different and more productive way to channel their passion regarding a particular principle, program, or person. So obviously, they're very passionate about it because they can't let it go. Now, that is, I want to say, a good thing. Okay? Passion is a good thing, but you've got to help them channel that passion into a productive manner. So get all that passion, get all that power, get all that, gusto within them that I just can't let it go. I can't let this go. All right. That's good. That can help you in the work environment. All right. People like that. So teach them, help them see a different and more productive way to channel that passion regarding that particular, it's going to be toward a principle, a program, or a person. If they're that passionate about it, chances are that they're probably pretty skilled at it. I'm just saying. So get them in there, figure out their ideas, their thoughts, and put them to work, especially if it's good ideas and good thoughts. If they're passionate about all terrible things, well then maybe you should think about and pray about getting rid of them. But so that's today's podcast mini. Choose the right people. I hope this podcast has been helpful. I'll catch you on the next one. See you later, everybody. Bye.